those of us, who ran search engines, we'd be on stage and talking. But in the audience were all the spammers. all the whole SEO.
How can we take advantage of
the
all
whole
this?
SEO community? And if you went outside or to the bar afterwards, everyone's together. And that game of trying to send traffic for their own purposes, that's not new. Why is Yahoo Finance still number one? Why is Yahoo Sports top two? Why do so many people want aggregated news? And what can we do to lean into that? Why is Yahoo Mail still so popular? And the spine of that book is always goes back to...
what is it? What's the answer?
Well, it always goes back to Jerry and David's original founding of the company. They were trying to be the guide to the internet, but every now and then...
against the norm. That is contrary to...
Okay, but think about why that happened. Everyone who was involved was not a traditional search product manager or engineer. They all came out of academia. And so the UI, not surprisingly, looks like an academic research paper.
My guest today has been CEO of Ask.com, CEO of Tinder, and now CEO of Yahoo. If you're sensing a theme, it's that Jim Lanzone has spent his entire career betting on companies the internet forgot about and making them matter again. The question is, can he do it one more time with AI closing in from every direction? Here's my conversation with Jim Lanzone. Search wars, the streaming wars, and the search wars again. And I'm sure there are 50 other online wars you've been engaged in. You're obviously running Yahoo. Some people remember it from their, maybe me. My college email, I think, was Elfman. I won't say the exact numbers. Elfman something back in sort of a D&D type era of Eric Newcomer. But obviously still a huge center for traffic. You're obviously doing a lot to stay current in the AI era. Just give us the snapshot of sort of Yahoo in terms of who's using it today.
Yeah, I think it's surprising people. For some reason, even though, Google is 28 years old and Amazon's also 30 years old, eBay, I think Twitter just had its 20th anniversary. Yeah, it's funny that Yahoo, probably just because of the history of it, does kind of get talked about as being around a long time.
It defined one era,
well,
right?
It has had a lot of ups and downs, and that's part of the story. And we can talk about some of that. But the interesting thing about Yahoo is, for all the corporate difficulties, through time as a public company selling to Verizon, then we bought it and spun it back out at the end of
with Apollo,
2021,
which seems like a good deal.
Apollo got it for around $5 billion after all that. So it is still today, now fast forward to 2026, in the last ComScore rankings, we were third in the United States in total traffic. We're almost 250 million users in the US, which is almost 90% of the US. Interestingly, about 50% of our audience today is Gen Z and millennial. I think when you cover 90% of the US, you have to, be that, cover that broad of a group. And that's actually our fastest growing group. And things like Yahoo Mail, which you might associate as being an older product for the Elfman and others. And it's about 700 million, worldwide users. And that's after we actually got out of a lot of countries when I first got here. And we were the turnaround team. There were a lot of things that we had to do to kind of get the company on the right foot. So we kind of got out of some countries that weren't, that didn't make sense. So it is still that big. And the way we get to that size is different than a lot of, there are a lot of companies that are one product companies, right?
You got finance, you've got sort of this
and we are a conglomerate.
Right.
They're all Yahoo branded. And we did have some brands like AOL that were not Yahoo branded that we've sold along the way. But we are now all Yahoo branded. And finance, sports, mail, news is still top 3. Things like weather are still, top 5 and still very big properties. And then search, I think, is still a surprise that in the US we're still the 3rd ranked search engine. Now that's far away from Google, but still a lot of traffic in a very lucrative category. So we're all those things together kind of add up. The Yahoo brand itself doesn't mean one. There's not just one property. Yahoo.com, which we've kind of been working on over the past few years, is a hub for all of those things. But again, there are many companies that just do one thing, and that's not us.
And there are lots of pieces of it that I want to talk about. You used to own at TechCrunch. You touched the news. Obviously, as a news person, it's interesting to me. But Yahoo obviously fought with Google through search, made some, I guess, failed partnership decisions. You've criticized them yourself. What was the key mistake? It's sort of outsourced search, right?
Well, it's the interesting thing is Yahoo is always talked about as having lost search to Google and kind of shit on for that and talked about what you shouldn't do strategically, but that's not actually what happened. And again, that's 26 years since this happened, and it was before many generations of Yahoo, let alone mine. But from the beginning, 1995, Yahoo always outsourced search, interestingly, because I think they helped popularize search. But that search box was outsourced through enterprise deals. So I can't remember who it initially was, but it became Inktomi. And then during the crash period, during the first web 1.0 crash, in June of 2000, which was kind of the big month that it really everything fell apart for the industry, they switched to Google because it was the best search engine. And that became the enterprise solution for Yahoo Search. The big mistake that was made is that in order to save money and get a better deal, they gave Google a link back to Google on every search results page that was the Google logo. So if you did a search on Yahoo and you clicked on that logo, it would do the search on Google. And so people just
training people, just go to...
I've said it's almost like ChatGPT or Claude having a logo on every Google search results page now. So that kicked off, I think, a couple of decades of trying to figure out, how to make up for that, because Google, search became, the best revenue model that you could possibly have. But in June of 2000, there wasn't one.
Right. And you can see the philosophy. Yeah. It's like we link out to news organizations. We're helpful. Right. We get people to go other places we trust. We're the portal.
Yeah.
But obviously, in retrospect, a huge strategic error. So, you were not even thinking probably about the company at the time. But now, you run the company that made that decision. So now we enter the chatbot era. Like, do you think, first of all, does the chatbot replace the internet? Or how much of sort of internet activity do you think will, in a decade flow through me talking to a sort of an AI chatbot?
I'd say still somewhat unclear. It's a bit of a misnomer to say that finally now going beyond 10 blue links. And my first run through search, I spent my first 10 years or so in search. That was when we really went beyond 10 blue links. It was literally 10 links. Alta Vista kind of popularized that UI. Google picked it up from there. And then in the mid 2000s, we all started building structured data search into the page. So if you think about
you're getting answers when
weather, lyrics, sports scores, multimedia, these things all started to have local information, maps. They all started happening over time. So it's interesting now that area is on Google is populated by AI mode. So now you're kind of getting chatbot responses, which are their own flavor of search. They don't replace all of search. And I think this next step of agentic, we're still very early. I think thinking about the search box as the interface for doing anything probably does make a lot of sense, interestingly, because that's where everything started. If you think about how Yahoo started in 1995, it was a directory that then led to news and mail and fantasy sports and other things coming into that, becoming the portal. But it started with the search box. And to think that all the way through now, 30 years later, that search box is about to become the Iron Man suit and power everything that you might be able to do is really interesting. I do think it tends to go that way. And you see that now where WhatsApp has a chatbot, built in. Snap has it built in. So that is starting to happen. And what that turns into, I think, is still to be written.
To defend the portal, my problem with chatbots is that I need to have an idea of what I want to do. And it's sort of like, I really need to have a plan and really sort of pursue something. There's value to be like, oh, what's going on? Like, give me sort of a picture of it. Like, do you think sort of you're sort of playing both in that you're making sure you're in a good position on chatbots, and you obviously have the key portal strategy, but do you think the regular consumer is going to want this chatbot all the time for all their sort of like information needs? Or is it too much work to ask the news consumer?
I think people in our industry can, especially everyone who's building all night now, with all these new tools that are coming, are available, do forget how much the industry itself is not the same as your average user out on the street. So those people do tend to want things done for them. They want things that are free. They don't want to put in the extra effort. I mean, if I go back to Web 1.0 search, my favorite was that 85% of users, if you surveyed them, said they wanted advanced search, which you probably don't remember what that is. It was Boolean search.
I remember.
Less than 1% used it. They said they wanted it, but they
want the power.
They didn't actually. They want, and we put in a lot of effort in that day and age into thinking about how to get them to construct queries a certain way, and that all went away. It just became go to the search box, spit it out, and it's up to us on the other side of that box to deal with it. And I do think, especially when it comes to search, that's where it's going to head. And we could talk about it, but we, a month and a half ago launched our own AI search product called Yahoo Scout. And to your point in the portal, we also just launched last week the next generation of what used to be known as My Yahoo, which was a very popular Silicon Valley product, which was your own personalized version of the Yahoo portal.
I feel like I had all these different colors.
And people loved it. And they could move things around on the page. And but that was done in a very rudimentary, old school way. But it was popular. We had to shut that down when I got here because the platform it was built on was so old that to upgrade it was just going to be just incredibly expensive. And we just decided to build it over again, knowing that AI was on the way. So we just last week launched My Scout, which looks a lot like the old My Yahoo, but it is built by and on top of our AI search platform. So it automatically builds for you on the page. And just by querying Scout, you can actually create your own categories. So anything you want can now become a tile for your own personalized portal on the page.
Right. So it's not, the chatbot can help you sort of have defaults. And you can already see sometimes defaults, with ChatGPT, they're like suggesting questions you can ask. Like it's clear that that's different than just like a portal you go to. But
and also they are limited to date by what the thing they know about you is your search history. And so Pulse, which is their first product, was very much based on the searches you've been doing. Oh, do you want to know how to become a better CEO of Yahoo? How do you about these health issues you've asked me about? Whatever these things go on with your kids, like whatever you've been asking it is kind of what they suggest up in their portal. We do have a built-in advantage in that if you are a logged in Yahoo user, and over 70% of our users are logged in on any given day, we start to populate it automatically with Yahoo Finance, with stock quotes, with sports scores, with headlines, with your mail, all those things, your location, your weather, they all automatically populate. And then you can add categories onto it from there.
All right. So you're preparing for NewFronts right now, which
we are.
I never covered like the media streaming wars. It was very important, I think, in the peak streaming days, but it's a moment to talk to advertisers. I imagine it's especially interesting with OpenAI. I mean, like we want to get into advertising. You're sort of, have more and more of an AI pitch. Like what is the dynamic in NewFronts broadly today? Like what do you think the key themes that people are grabbing onto? And then we can talk about Yahoo specifically.
I mean, I think different for everybody. The way the NewFronts started many years ago was to give online streamers, and I used to work at CBS and we had CBS All Access, which became Paramount Plus. We had our own version of this, but it was built
not just work at it. I think you were a pretty important guy.
Yeah, I ran digital for them. So, but they, for decades they had the upfronts,
right?
Which was, for CBS we had Carnegie Hall, and the whole ad community would come in, and you would tell them the new shows for the next fall season, and all the stars would show up, and then you'd have a party afterwards, and they would be there to take photos. I think they called it the petting zoo, where you would have the logos over every show, and all the stars would be there to take photos with all the press and all the advertisers that would be in attendance. The NewFronts was a version of that for Hulu and YouTube and Netflix, eventually once they had advertising and others. So Yahoo's version of that is a little bit different because we do have shows, but they are very much part of our verticals. So for sports and for finance, we have nonfiction content that is, really trying to help you with the decisions you're making, the goals you're trying to achieve in those categories. So we're not breaking news, we're not getting scoops. We are providing context in that category. So we have Kevin O'Connor, who's the number one NBA podcast. We have Ariel Helwani, who's the number one MMA podcast, and Brian Sazi and our people on Yahoo Finance and others. So we do about 60 hours a week of original programming now for sports, almost that much for finance. But for the most part, we also have, this whole network of other products, right? We're a product company at the end of the day. And so our NewFront is really talking about all the new products that we're launching with the new Yahoo, all the things that have evolved in our audience.
Is just you guys or everybody's doing them?
This is just you have your own individual time.
Okay, but do they happen? They all happen around
different places. You all rent out.
Okay.
So for CBS in the old days,
but it's the same period of time.
Hall,
everybody's sort of
NBC would be Radio City. You would all have those. So we have a place a few blocks away from here in Midtown, and tomorrow night at 6:00 to 8 p.m. we will have 2 dedicated hours for Yahoo with me kicking it off. I've somehow been convinced to wear a cowboy outfit on stage to start it off in the big opening, and all our GMs get up and talk about all the parts of the company. Yeah.
Are you optimistic about advertising in language models and chatbots?
Well, that's a whole new thing,
right? Well, I just think you're talking to advertisers on the mind. It's such a big question right now.
So, yeah, look, and way back in the day, my company, we were the first ones to switch from Overture to Google AdWords. Like I go way back in the search category, and I'm very passionate that that search advertising does need to cross the chasm to AI search, and that while it won't be one-for-one efficient, meaning keyword targeted blue links that look just like the editorial links were a great business model for 25 years now. It will look a little bit different, and it probably will be somewhat less efficient in this new UI. But I think actually the characteristics of the two are actually more similar than people would think. And there's a little work that needs to be done to bring them over and how you're going to match keywords and how you're going to render it. But I actually think this new environment will be more similar to traditional search than people think in that way. With Yahoo Scout, we actually, one of the core values of the product has been that forgetting very Italian with how I'm talking, forgetting the search advertising part of it just the traditional listings themselves for the results themselves. What we've done with Yahoo Scout is we've actually put a lot of work into linking back out to publishers. So all in our results, which if you go to scout.com, you'll find our own, Yahoo-powered AI search product. The results are really good. They're really unique, and I can talk about why that is. But also in the UI, you'll see a lot of blue highlights all through.
And that's what publishers like me want, right? We want the old world where it's like, send us traffic. And in some ways, you're sort of saying that aligns with advertisers because they would like people to actually go to their sites. Whereas the sort of ethos of a chatbot is the answer is here. And so I guess, do you think, you maybe disagree with that, but that is certainly the big, Anthropic, OpenAI, they are trying to solve the problem in the box. Like, do you think that type of ad will send people elsewhere, or advertisers are going to need to be content with, well, they got exposure to me sort of in this context. They didn't necessarily go to my website.
We'll start with our editorial results. At Scout, they link elsewhere. Right. So our results are by paragraph, but every now and then
against the norm. That is contrary to.
Okay, but think about why that happened. So first of all, let's start here. It's extremely important to link out to the publishers who created this content in the first place. Without it, whether you're a large language model or anybody else, you won't have any content to bring together in a answer to provide value to the user, right? So those publishers surviving and thriving is extremely important to everyone involved. Why didn't that happen with the first generation of chatbot AI search results? I just don't think they prioritized it. Everyone who was involved was not a traditional search product manager or engineer. They all came out of academia, right? Whether they were DeepMind or then went to OpenAI, that was their background. And so the UI, not surprisingly, looks like an academic research paper. And they had sources at the end that were, footnotes essentially that you would find in a research paper. And so not surprisingly, they're not very prominent in the UI. Not that many people click on them. I mean, I think it's less than like 1% of, AI search results in a click to one of those sources. And I think that was just a trick of how the UI of this first generation was done. Google was caught flat-footed, I think, by the launch of ChatGPT. And of course, because they are by far number one in search, they had to counter that UI that ChatGPT was helping define the category. So whether or not they wanted to embrace it or not, they had to. And so that's why Gemini's first version of this looks like that. With Scout, we are trying to take a different direction. We're much smaller. We have less at stake. And we, I think, have the luxury of being able to employ a different UI and kind of help show the way on that. I do think eventually all AI chatbots need to, for their own good, meaning like being able to monetize without subscription, because that's not going to get you all the way there, are going to need to find a way to link out, both because it's good for the health of the internet, good for the health of publishers, without whom we won't have this content. And then, yeah, I do think that there will be paid versions of that will look and operate somewhat like traditional search advertising. And without linking out, you won't be able to do that either.
Right. I hadn't connected the publisher piece to the advertising piece. That gives me the most hope that these models need to push out a little bit, because they're going to need to push out for their advertisers. And so maybe then they push out. So I can see that, but I don't know. The tech industry has gotten so extractive. Like this view that you're articulating of, we need to take care of the underlying like media organizations or content providers so that we have the content to aggregate. That does seem like sort of the Yahoo spirit, like of yesteryear, but it feels like that's sort of been forgotten in a world where Google is just not linking to anything. Like, I don't know. I don't see the rest of the tech industry embracing that sort of, we need to maintain sort of all the fuel that we're using underneath.
Well, I think another thing will drive them that way, which is, I think it will wind up being shown over time that it is better for users as well to have the sources show up more prominently. In our case, not only do the blue highlights are they linking out, but if you hover over them, you see the source. And that's just extremely useful for someone, doing the research. As you know, these things hallucinate. They're dated sometimes. They don't always provide the right information. Depending on the category, and the number one category for Yahoo Scout so far, only a month and a half in, is health. You do want to validate these sources and not just take for granted that the engine is providing an accurate result. So I actually think it's good for publishers. I think it's good from a monetization point of view, but I think most importantly, in a lot of ways, it's better for the user as well. Just because it is still early. We're still only 3 years into this, and that UI that has become the default, was a fluke of how it was launched. I mean, I don't even think they anticipated how popular it was going to be.
Definitely
if you go back and do
it.
Better than anybody.
To put out ChatGPT. It was like, oh my God, wow, this is crazy.
That's right. And so, that isn't the UI that had to be. And I don't think it's what Google would have launched if they had come out the gates first.
Do you have a view on how copyright's going to net out? I mean, the Trump administration just put out their sort of AI guidelines, which I thought were somewhat thin. I don't have a full view on all of them, but one of them was sort of like, we should let the courts, I guess, decide on copyright. Like, we're not going to come down super hard, and that's going to play out. It fits into what we were talking about, just because if you're not emphasizing pushing people to links, it feels more and more like you're just stealing their IP if you're just using it for your own answer. Like, have you done an analysis on how much you think sort of models could get hit with copyright at the end of this, or they're just too ubiquitous and they've just won by being like so dominant at this point?
Yeah. I'm not a lawyer, just play one on TV.
I'm sure you have lawyers running around.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I do think that for 30 years, the social contract of the internet and of search was that a search engine would crawl you unless you, with robots.txt, you decided you didn't want to be crawled for whatever reason. And then search engines respected that, or were supposed to. And that the social contract was that they would take a snippet and the link, and they would link back out to you. And then if you wanted to have other information like, lyrics, you would actually, or images, you would acquire those from a structured data provider, and then you would add those to the page. So, but the reason you wanted to be crawled and you wanted traffic, and that was how you had a business, so that you could keep creating that content. So if you start to go to a world where that content is taken, digested, and interestingly, not even for the answers, but to be able to predict, it's autocomplete, to predict the next word or letter or token. I mean, it's just, that was never contemplated when you were coming up with this. And I feel for the companies who are really based on evergreen content, with Yahoo, we are one of the top 20 publishers whose content shows up in an LLM. So we're weirdly on both sides of this.
With deals you struck, or just
no, no, they're just taking. Yeah,
are you suing over it?
No, we haven't. We have not done that at this point. But when
the statute, you have a clock. You're like, we have to decide by.
No, I mean it's interesting that even the people who are being paid don't believe that they're going to be able to make enough of a living that way. So that's the other interesting thing happening here. I think only 20%, I saw a survey, only 20% of publishers believe that they can make enough money by selling their content to large language models in that way.
Well, some publishers struck what seemed like a huge deal with Anthropic. I don't know the numbers, but then if you look on a per book basis, it's not like you could write books for a living just being like, this book is going to.
Well, that's books. I mean, just talk about web publishers. I mean, tens of millions is probably not going to cut it for the level of businesses that these companies are running. So something else has to happen. I believe what needs to happen is they need to, before it's too late, do the right thing and link out, and let's do the right thing for their users and do the right thing for publishers. So let's start with trying to get there first, before we worry about, just throwing in the towel and saying this is the way it's always going to be. But I really, again, it's not just Pollyanna, like, hey, let's do this and try to be the good guys here. We are trying to be the good guys on that for sure. We think it's the right thing to do, but I also really do find it really valuable in the UI. And I think if you use Scout, you'll feel the same way.
Finance is obviously a huge, important vertical, one that I think about a lot. How much do you think, the retail trader is going to become smarter because of LLMs? Or how much are you doing anything to give them advice based on what language models think? And what do you see in terms of, just like the retail trader and what they want for financial environment in this new world?
Well, one dirty secret of that is that, of course, Yahoo Finance for 30 years, people have tried to copy it, tried to kill it, Google themselves. Interestingly, the person who started it for Google is on my board at Yahoo now, Katie Stanton. But it's interesting how resilient that property has been over the years. And that's before, I think we've really tried to make it better and have some other things coming that I think will be a lot better. Again, you fall into an area where the most basic features are the ones that are used the most. And so that deep research is used by a smaller and smaller percentage of the user base. We are, but really, stock quotes and news wound up being at the very top of that pyramid. And we are building things, using AI, using Scout that allow, people to go deeper and do harder core research. And we do have things in the pipeline for that. We've also, as part of the launch of Scout, we did launch features straight into every one of our products so far, not just finance, but fantasy sports, news, email, everything has got some bit of Scout. We call it the Scout Intelligence Platform, kind of pushing features into it. And one is, explain to you what changed about the stock, why is it trending in this direction, things like that. But yes, I think there is a future of much richer, detailed products in every category that AI can help drive.
One, we've sort of hit on twice the situation where the consumer doesn't want sort of the super deep features, or they like advanced search, and then on finance we're talking about, it's like they want a couple things. They're not necessarily doing intense hardcore research. I feel like in sort of the AI consumer, somebody I think had a tweet I'm stealing. I'll have to go find it and throw it up on the screen. But basically, the idea is that I think there are a lot of people who think consumers want AI to save them time, like in business, or make me sort of more efficient, better at calendaring or something. But in a lot of cases, what they actually want is sort of to waste time sort of more enjoyably, and they want AI to be fun and lively. And I guess I'm just getting at what do you think the consumer really wants from AI? Where do you think there are real needs that LLMs can satisfy versus right now they're sort of just getting thrown, things that researchers built sort of natively to them and stuff that's working for enterprises, but doesn't really have like the consumer.
It always has been category by category. So I think AI now is, horizontal across everything that's happening out there, and it depends. So yeah, in I don't know what part of it you're using for entertainment. Is that like it's your buddy and you're having conversations with it?
OpenAI had the sort of like, oh, we're going to create like slop videos. My wife has recently been sending me these. I don't know how much TikTok you waste your life watching, but they're a very viral TikTok of the moment is fruits like arguing with each other, like cheating on each other. It's like as if it's like The Bachelor, but it is fruit, and it is like it's the first time I found it terrible. I was like, I don't know why you're watching this, but it's like Slop, is sort of hitting story in a way. Like I feel like this sort of like time wasting video is where it like can be sort of tested enough, and it's just like throw shit at the wall and see what resonates with people. I don't know.
No, that makes sense. That's just incremental. I mean, Amazon just announced AI Studios. I think Albert Chang, was formerly of ABC and Disney, and is now running it. So there obviously is a future for that. It makes more sense in short form videos, right? Lower consequences and it's more time burning.
Don't spin up the whole movie.
Yeah, but TikTok's not new or Reels is not new to how you, or YouTube Shorts to how you've been spending time. That's consumed much, much more of your entertainment time than it used to. So, I think that makes sense. We tend to operate much more in categories where you are trying to get things done.
So you do have a little bit more of that professional.
Well, it's some of them are utilities. So I would say email, search, maybe weather are in the utilities category. We do have content categories, sports and finance. But again, in finance, you're trying to make more money or save money. Sports is the one where, obviously that's entertainment, but Yahoo users are using it to play fantasy, beat the snot out of their friends,
right. Take it too seriously.
Bet, win money. They're actually using it for these things. So not to be cheesy about it, but we did have to reset the mission of the company when I got here. Yahoo was a turnaround. It had been owned by Verizon for many years before that, serving whatever purposes they bought it for. Before that, it was a struggling public company, having to make really hard choices about what it was going to do to survive and try to grow against some really hard headwinds of Google and Facebook and YouTube and, social media, other things. So, we had the benefit almost of being able to only focus on what was good about Yahoo. We didn't have to worry about the rest of it. Why is Yahoo Finance still number one? Why is Yahoo Sports top two? Why do so many people want aggregated news? And like, what can we do to lean into that? Why is Yahoo Mail still so popular? And the spine of that book is always goes back to,
what is it? What's the answer?
Well, it always goes back to Jerry and David's original founding of the company. They were trying to be the guide to the internet. It says it right on the original page, Jerry and David's Guide to the World Wide Web. And that started because Andreessen had started Mosaic, and it was originally it said on the page for Mosaic. And it was because that you had access to the internet, but you didn't know how to find anything. And then that evolved into doing things. And Yahoo is your home base, for that. So we, did not have infinite resources taking this over. Our job to do was to make sure we understood what people were using Yahoo for. And that was for trying to accomplish these goals in whatever category it was. So all of our focus and roadmap started to go behind that. And that's when we started to move out things that didn't.
Right, but it's still rooted in the internet, or it's
all internet, but you're using the internet to accomplish those things. So when it comes to AI, we just launched literally today as an example in email. You talk about entertainment versus calendar and all that, but we launched a product called Planner, and it does go in using Scout technology and extracts all these like next step things that need to demand your attention, that you need to know, a deadline, something for your kid's school, a flight, doctor's appointment. It extracts that out and automatically adds it to your calendar. If you're or to a to-do list in Yahoo, we have that feature as well. And that's using AI to remove steps so that you can get things done better and faster that you didn't have to think about. Like, I think that's a good one. I had my first fantasy baseball draft of the season last night. And if you are a Yahoo Plus subscriber, it will be your research assistant and help you do a better job in your draft. So it really is category by category.
I buy that Yahoo is more of a friend to the internet than some of these LLMs, because it's like, okay, we want to get people to the good stuff out there so they can find it. And that's really what the business has been about. But has that raw material just gotten like worse over time? Like, is the internet just degrading? It feels like media is getting worse. You know, I think of like even Reddit, which for a while I think there was a meme. And it's like, oh, if you wanted a good Google search result, you just search what are they saying on Reddit, which I think is somewhat true. But to some degree, I worry more and more that Reddit posts are becoming like, was this an LLM AMA or is this a real one? I don't know. Do you worry about just like the raw materials that you rely on the internet getting worse right now?
I mean, I hate to always bring it back to this isn't new, but you know, if you go back to my first time in search, Danny Sullivan, I don't know if you remember Danny, but he had the biggest search engine conference. 5,000 people would go. And those of us, you know, who ran search engines, we'd be on stage and talking. But in the audience were all the spammers. all the whole SEO.
How can we take advantage of
the
all
whole
this?
SEO community? And if you went outside or to the bar afterwards, everyone's together. And that game of trying to send traffic for their own purposes, that's not new. And you know, there are really good SEOs who are trying to be helpful for publishers, and there's ones who are trying to game the engines to, you know, drive it to you know, lower tier traffic. That is not a new game. I don't think AI slop. I think that's another part of it. Think about the decade before, clickbait. I mean, it's just, you know, all these attention vampires out there like trying. Think about how headlines change over the years from the ones that you would have written 10, 15, no, probably 15, 20 years ago to over the last 10 years after BuzzFeed, and like how even the New York Times headlines became very like BuzzFeed type headlines. So this trend has been out there. But I would say there's more good content than there's ever been, certainly than 20 years ago on the internet. Just by sheer volume, if you think about not only is the content on the Times and Washington Post and CNN and BBC and you know, all these places, like there's amazing content in these places, but then with Substack and then with YouTube, I mean, it is endless how much great content is out there. So I think it is our job to help you find the good stuff and to be your guide through that digital wilderness and you know, avoid falling into, you know, off a cliff or stepping on a rattlesnake or whatever we have to help you do to get through it all. That is historically our job, and we have to, you know, do a good job of that. That job will get harder over the next 30 years, but it's not a new job.
I think I agree with you that overall it's gotten better. I mean, YouTube explainers, that whole category is sort of like you can go to YouTube for sort of any question you have about the world. I think the New York Times has gotten better, but obviously like local papers have generally gotten worse. It's hard to score overall. I mean,
there's been puts and takes.
In this generation, I'm less like Jim Prosser, a PR guy in Silicon Valley who I respect, has a blog. He basically argued that like the SEO optimization for LLMs category, I forget what people are calling it, but yeah. But he said he thought that was sort of fake, or like that there isn't as much to be done there. Do you agree with that?
Honestly, I follow a lot of SEOs. I you know, came out of that industry. I know a lot of those people. I read on Twitter all day long. Everything. They're just trying to do what they can to adapt and to get that traffic was pulled out from under them in a lot of extremely important categories that have been. And to your point, you know, not really with any heads up. You know, this was just done in the dark of night, and all of a sudden it's like, here are these
yeah,
products.
I'm not even shitting on the SEO.
So
I'm more saying, is there money to be made helping people optimize for language models right now, or you think that's not going to be a big business?
I mean, if it is the traditional large language model with footnotes at the end, it's going to be a hard one. But yeah, it's the industry will have to adapt to prioritizing traffic, or it'll be hard. I mean, I do watch those discussions that they're having about trying to figure out like, oh, if you know, because what they're hearing from Google and others is, you know, it's the same. Do it the same. You know, you have to optimize for these characteristics and you're paying on quality and speed and freshness and all these things. But at the end of the day, if the UI does not enable someone to easily click out or click out at all, it's going to be hard.
Right. Hard to see value from it if
it's going to be hard to get traffic.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, I also think users have been trained and this is where I go to, we're only 3 years into the next 30 years. So I think it can be evolved over time now, but it's not going to happen overnight. They have been trained initially with these products to not click,
Definitely. My biggest concern, rather than like spam for language model error, well, not my biggest concern. A concern is just whether the consumer is savvy enough, right? I think on Twitter especially, you see all this like AI writing that goes so viral, and it just feels like, who is the speaker? Like the markets are moving, off of reports that feel like they could have been written by AI.
Although the mission for Twitter is Wild West. It's free speech, anything goes. We're not going to curate it, and that's a good thing. So that's probably not the right place to go if you want to.
But that's where we've been going.
Yeah, but I would argue those users are getting what they're asking for in using that product. I mean, I use it, all the time, and you just have to know what you're getting yourself into. It is, they have been launching more features to maybe help you curate it more. And but look, every one of these feed-based products is always trying to get you to the For You column. They're all about that, and that's the one that's most susceptible to that.
Your answer for this problem is to trust sort of news outlets, right? Which you then sort of drive traffic. Like, you're not personally going and saying like who's real, who's not, what's true, what's not.
We definitely are when it comes to Yahoo.com or Yahoo News.
But you're saying which outlets are true, right? Or like you adjudicate.
We are trying to be purple in terms of left and right. And I would always remind people there's only one category. When people say they don't trust the media, they're not talking about sports or food critics or movie critics or people who cover the real estate. It's politics is the dividing category. And so for that one, we really try to, especially for people who are not logged in, just starting out, not move them one way or the other. Now, you will, by the algorithm, be moved one way or the other based on your preferences over time. I think that's totally fair, as long as the source is a trustworthy source. We are partnered with hundreds into the thousands of publishers. So we have vetted these sources that you will see showing up.
Right, you're deciding is Reuters trustworthy.
The only thing that shows up on Yahoo is someone we've done a partnership with when it comes to news. When it comes to Yahoo Scout, our AI answer engine, there's all kinds of data that's coming into that, including vertical publisher data. We also ground it on Bing. It's based on usage data, query data, all the things that Yahoo uniquely has over time. It's one reason our answers are pretty unique. But in that way, it is curated. It is not just a random pull by digesting the entire internet and then predicting the next
You're
token.
striking partnerships.
Yeah, we're actually trying to have a high quality in our answers.
I mean, the news business can feel essential. A trend we haven't touched on as much, like prediction markets. I think there was a reporter who was worried he was getting threatened over saying that like a missile had hit something because a prediction market hung over it, and there was an angry reader trying to get him to adjust the article to, I guess, help the bet. So, prediction markets resolve to some of these news outlets. Obviously,
Wild West, man.
Right.
It's amazing.
Language models, it's like a lot of materials news. I mean, you own TechCrunch, which obviously
No, we sold.
Yeah, you owned.
Yeah.
Past tense. That's what I'm saying. Yes, past tense. And decided not to continue owning. Like, how much is your view that, the news business is fucked?
Well, that wasn't it. It was that we were kind of had one foot in hot water, one in cold water. Like, who are we? We have to choose. We were bought by private equity. We're starting back out. Like, you just have to focus, And so for us, over time, it was that we're not in the breaking news business. So we aren't having reporters on the front lines, reporting the news out from there. That we will aggregate that news and send them traffic, and we're glad they do it. But that's not what we do. Our content is for context to the things that people breaking the news report. And historically, Yahoo Sports is a good example. The best breaking news reporters in basketball, originally Woj, then Shams, they started at Yahoo.
You were the breeding ground.
It was the breeding ground for that. But again, and I saw this at CBS as well, because we ran CBSSports.com. We had all kinds of, writers on the front lines. And, SportsCenter would barely mention us, in breaking the news. I mean, it was within 5 seconds, it's already out there. So we just felt like that's not where we can add the most value. And maybe we don't find the most value ourselves.
Right, which is it? Like,
and also why be the?
But is there value?
But also why be the 200th player in that? It's not where Yahoo should play. You know, we were literally competing against the Associated Press for news stories. That's not our job. Our job is to send the Associated Press traffic.
Yeah, I mean, you define your job. I mean, I guess to me, the world is short on breaking news. I'm not saying anybody is obligated to be in any particular business, but I want to disentangle, like, do you think breaking news is not like a great business?
Well, again, I would say we have to go back to, sometimes when people talk about someone buying our company, they're like, oh, but would it get by regulators? I'm like, I love that we're at this point in time, 31 years, that after all Yahoo went through and how much people in the industry kind of dragged the brand through the mud, that they would think that we would be the source of being, you know, of a regulatory thing with an acquisition. That doesn't make sense. But I would say the same thing here, that Yahoo of all, you know, publishers would be the one that is being.
Why hold us to account?
Well,
on
is the one that you're saying is missing from the front lines of journalism. I think there's a lot of
You're doing far more journalism than every other tech platform in the world. Right.
We do a lot of journalism, but again, we do it from a certain point of view of like that is not the breaking news side that I think a lot of people
I'm not trying to
put their resources into.
In some ways, it's because you're the closest to it that you have the perspective.
Part of doing a turnaround is people always, you know, are saying like, what's the formula for that? There's not always one. People is the most important part. People who know what they're doing, and then they naturally put a great strategy in place and build great products and you know, and all that. But you know, one part of that is strategic focus. You can't do everything, especially when you're trying to fix the P&L, you know, get a solid foundation going for the future. That is where we really were coming from and all that.
But breaking news, I mean, it becomes a headache, or like were things getting like escalated up to you, or it's just like the business of breaking news is hard to manage? Or
not for very long. We made these decisions fairly soon after we took over. But no, I wouldn't. Certainly no decisions would make their way up to me.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember back at CBS, I had all kinds of news brands. This was my first rodeo running a news brand. Like we did not get involved. No.
Well, that's why I'm asking for your sort of overall perspective on news right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting spot. I mean, I think the corporate ownership of all of these things, the you know, what's being pushed on journalists from an editorial perspective, and you know, at the same time, there are we work with hundreds, thousands of sources. You know, I think the ones are the flashpoints are always interesting. There's nothing more interesting to journalists than other journalists, and I've always found that too. And so, you know, that is not happening across the board. There are still the vast majority of sources are not falling into that camp. So what I would say is news sources are definitely seeing less traffic, you know, because of the way search has been evolving. So that part of it has been difficult for the industry. And, you know, staffing in a premium way requires premium CPMs. Right. And I think what happened over the previous 15 years was programmatic CPMs against premium staffing equals very difficult business model.
Right.
So now other things have evolved, like podcasting and other ways to, you know, to go with if you're those kinds of brands. But yeah, it has been a hard business and harder for some than others. You know, New York Times is still doing really well. There are others doing well.
Right, that's what I was going to ask you.
Anyone who's subscription based, and this could be, you know, really anybody. You have to start with a broad funnel, usually of free. If you're Netflix and you define the category, ChatGPT in some ways with that, where it was a subscription model to start with. The only way you could use it was, in many ways, was subscription based. But at the end of the day, only 5% of ChatGPT users I believe are paying subscribers. So again, back to that broad funnel. And I think that requires brand, that requires scale. So it is, you know, for the few who are able to have that kind of a model. And then on the other side of that, you will have more niche things. And that is where, you know, historically trade publications would fit in. They would charge a lot of money and not have a huge subscriber base, but they were prestigious in their industry. And I think
I'm happy to take on that mantle.
And I think that Substack and others have come along in that niche and furthered that. So
what Yahoo's obviously privately owned. Like what can you say about the business today?
That's good being private. I think.
Don't you want to brag? I feel like
no, not yet. At some point, it's look, this was the kind of the white whale of turnarounds. It was one that I don't think a lot of people thought could be pulled off, and it was even. I feel like we have done that, but I think it's been a 4.5 year now journey to get there.
And you realize some of the, like selling AOL, like how much have you do the math, I guess, for sort of the Apollo deal to now?
Yeah. So, I mean, what they have said publicly is they've already returned the investment, the cash investment on it. So we're kind of playing for upside, on the rest of it. If you look at it as a PE deal, we're very unusual for that, right? Because we are heart of the beast Silicon Valley, who we compete with for users, who we sell to, all of that. It's not really, it doesn't fit the model of a traditional, PE deal in that way. And then AI, when we bought the company, it was the middle of like stonks and all of that. And then AI wasn't even on the map. And that happened in November of 22. We spun the company out in September of 21. So that's changed the whole game. So yeah, with deals like AOL, we actually sold the content delivery network that they owned when we first joined. We sold the branding rights to Yahoo back to Yahoo Japan when we first started. So they're like, and then smaller ones like TechCrunch and Rivals and Gadget. So you take those all together, and it's been we've returned quite a bit. And then the amazing thing is that the core Yahoo business, we've really optimized that. We've gotten the costs in a really good place. The quality of the people is incredible now, and they're all off and running. Traffic is growing at a really good rate. Revenue is growing at a really good rate. We're very profitable. But this was a company that went public in April of 1996. Started running into some headwinds in the 2000s, and I think for the next 15 years, it was kind of rough to be Yahoo, the public company. If you think about the famous deal where they didn't sell for $44 billion to Microsoft, that was 2008. And it went another almost 10 years before selling to Verizon. So that was a long time. So it is good to be I've done 2 startups that I founded or co-founded, but the majority of my career is wound up being in public companies or large companies. I'll just say there's some benefit to being public. I mean, to being private, to do to do all the things to fix it. Because once you go public, as like it is all about, you are held to account quarter by quarter, and you better understand what those next, 5 years are going to look like before you get there.
What?
And it's also hard to make changes in public.
What is a win look like for Scout and sort of your AI strategy? How much is it about showing the industry what it should be doing and then playing with the industry versus you want this to be sort of a huge product on its own? Like what is the goal with your AI strategy?
So if you go back to the turnaround strategy, it was a couple of years of transformation work to the org, to the team. And then once you got through into the revenue model and the revenue engine, we migrated from the old revenue engine to a new one that was just, was better. And then once you get through that, we earn the right, to then go and fix all the products. So then we went through that phase, and now we're in the shots on goal period. We have the resources.
Like it's working, we're making money, we got rid of the stuff that doesn't make sense.
We can go do something with this audience and that is, very loyal to us. And the places that are very logical, not to go do some rando innovation, something that has nothing to do with the spine of the book for Yahoo, but things that our users would find uniquely valuable, but also your asset base. So I would say there's 2 big ones right now. One is Scout. The others are DSP, our demand side platform in the ad tech space, which is growing at a really good clip. That competes with people like Trade Desk and DV360 from Google and Amazon and a lot of smaller players. We're the largest private DSP. And that is essentially, you can target, talking about the NewFronts, you could target on Yahoo, we will sell ads to you directly to go into our properties. You can also, using our data, then go through us to have ads on other people's properties. And so that has been a really good business. We shut down 2 ad tech businesses to focus on that one, and we think that could be potentially worth billions of dollars if we get that right.
So we're in business, is it?
I mean, it's a lot of top line revenue. You do there's there's a lot of revenue
ways you can
sharing
brag
that goes
about
back.
it, right?
Yeah. So so you do.
And how much
you
are
have
people
revenue
using
net
it
of traffic
to
that?
totally advertise off of Yahoo, or it's mostly for people who are already doing a lot of Yahoo advertising?
No, it's about only 9% of the impressions in that network are Yahoo. So that's also, our competitors will say you're only buying Yahoo and try to throw us under the bus that way. It's actually 90% are off of Yahoo. And so Netflix and Spotify and many, many other great properties
So that's the DSP.
work with the Yahoo DSP. Scout is interesting because there's a lot of great reasons to do it, which is why we built it ourselves. So Yahoo had outsourced search since 2009 to Bing. And same as Yahoo did originally. So it was almost like an enterprise search deal. And Bing did that to build up the volume in their network, right? The way search advertising works is it's not about the technology as much as it's about volume. The nth advertiser will, increase prices in the auction. They'll expand coverage. They'll increase relevance, which will help the click-through rate. That is really the secret, is the nth advertiser goes to Google. So if you put Bing and Yahoo together, for the Bing marketplace, it actually increases the likelihood the nth advertiser will also come into Bing. So that's why Yahoo and Bing have been partnered for so long. But when it came to this, we looked at the category about a year ago because we were coming through that transformation period. Felt like this was the next obvious thing to focus on, given search such a big part of our portfolio still, but outsourced it. And we looked at everything. We looked at every outsourced possibility that you could think of. And it came back to the idea that given all the data, 30 years of search history, all of our usage data, our user data, the publisher data, all of it, we actually were sitting on this gold mine of data that you could use to create a really good AI answer engine.
Right.
You have to partner with an index because you have to ground it for accuracy. But if you had that, and then it became very obvious that we already had a big search team that really weren't building index search that we could repurpose for this. So we tried to figure that out. And then last summer, we bought a startup run by a guy named Eric Fang, who's kind of a luminary in the industry. He back in the day, he worked at Microsoft and ran the research lab in Beijing, and he helped create Bing. But then he went with Jason Kilar and he co-founded Hulu. He was the head of technology and product for Hulu. So we both spent time in the streaming wars. And then was at Kleiner Perkins and Meta and other places before the startup. So Eric shared a passion with our team that what he called Yahoo's toys would be an amazing set of data to work with to create a product like this. And so we went up buying his company last summer and we put him in charge of consumer search. And so early August last year, we started building. And again, if we go back to why we did it, we have the third most search volume. It's small compared to Google, but still a very big business for us. We had to have the best AI search results or answers that we could possibly have. If we didn't, we would lose users because search is evolving and changing. And if it made sense, we would have outsourced it, but it actually made the most sense to build it.
How much of Yahoo.com are you funneling people? Like, are you
nothing
really?
So far?
Why not?
Because we are in beta and we're a month,
does it cost more money to distribute?
We're a little more than a month and a half in. And yeah, there is a cost. There's a cost both to grounding with Bing, and we work with a very lightweight model that Anthropic makes called Haiku. So it's super fast and it essentially processes our data. It's we're not, using, their answers. It's ours running through their lightweight model that comes back to us to render in our kind of, we love our UI. We think it's really rich UI that has some personality and some great answers. So all that together does cost some money. That cost is coming down over time. And then again, over time, I think search advertising will come back into this category and be able to, make this really profitable. So but in this early stage, we are trying to hone it. We actually have a Slack channel called Improve Scout. And hundreds of Yahoo employees are in there all the time, like feeding back on what's happening. We're getting user data in from people coming through it. I mean, it's in the millions of people who are, that have been through this and are using it. But at the right time, we'll come out of beta and want to unleash it across all 700 million users. But we just we're not in a huge hurry to do that yet.
Well, I'm cheering for the vision of getting traffic back out to the publishers.
Yeah, man.
Great to hear it. Thank you so much for coming on the Newcomer Podcast.
Thanks, Eric.
Great. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Please, if you've made it this far, you've got to like, comment, subscribe. Excited to grow the channel. And of course, you can find our writing and reporting on startups and venture capital at newcomer.co. We also host events. You can check out what we're doing at newcomer.events. Share other podcasts. Help us get distribution. Support the channel. Comment. Support. Like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. Thanks for being on the journey with us. All right. See you next week.